Hello, my name is Craig Nash. I'd like to welcome you to another It's a Grand Life. And I think you're really going to be blessed today. Our guest is Annette Liike, who is a caseworker and youth and family caseworker at Oakland County, Michigan, who really is an expert on the adoption process and the guardian process and how to navigate this. And I think she's really going to help our grand families and our whole audience. And if you're listening to this podcast and you're in another state, you may say, oh, no, this just really appeals to folks in Michigan. Not true. And that's going to give you an idea of what to expect as you navigate this process, whether you're in Tennessee or in Nevada or Colorado or wherever you are as part of our Grand Life family. Annette, thank you so much for joining us today. And we're excited to hear what you have to say about this very intriguing and vital process of adoption. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Craig. It's an honor to be on your show.
Well, I'm telling you what, ever since I met you a year ago, I've just been so intrigued by your commitment to families and trying to streamline this whole, what can be a very confusing process for those of us who are outside of the case management and government sector. But you make it sound so easy. And so the first question I have, Annette, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you ended up as such an excellent advocate for children and families in Michigan?
Sure. Initially, I started out with the state of Michigan as a caseworker, a foster care caseworker, and I worked with families in a different way, trying to keep families together. And when we weren't able to do that, then we ended up, filing a petition to terminate rights. And after doing that, I actually was an at-home mom for a while. And then I returned to Oakland County as an adoption caseworker. And that's what I've been doing ever since, bringing closure and permanence to families.
That sounds absolutely great. And I know that is got to be so rewarding. But when you're considering this whole situation of adoption or guardianship, when should grandparents or caregivers begin to pursue the adoption process for their grands?
Well, I think that's kind of an individual situation question. Everyone knows, first of all, it's a sad situation because, of course, you love your children,
right?
And you are glad to be a grandparent. However, when people get off the right track, and sadly, there's a number of reasons of why that happens: mental health issue, drug addiction, alcoholism. I mean, the list is kind of why people aren't able to parent their children. Then you have to decide, is this going to be something that's temporary, maybe an illness? Then that would just be a temporary guardianship. You know they're going to get through that illness, hopefully, and then you would not pursue adoption specifically. However, there are many situations where there's no indication that they are either breaking their habit or getting help for mental illness. And then at some point you have to decide, is this something that they're ever going to get a hold of? And how long is it going to take? Who knows is the answer to that question. It's unique for everyone. So at some point you have to decide, okay, I'm not just going to be a guardian anymore. I am going to be my grandchild's forever parent. And to me, as soon as you make that decision is when you should file for the adoption in place of the guardian.
That's a huge decision, right?
Yes, very huge decision.
And I know if our listeners are anything like my wife, Kathy, and I, you always want to hold out hope that your child is going to come around and be able to parent their son or daughter. And it's only when that is just impossible that you have to make that decision to head down the adoption road. Now, adoption is a it's a legal process. It's a serious process. And
it's a forever decision. Once you do it, you can't decide, oh, I'm not going to do this forever. You have to, once you've made the decision, you decided that you are now this child's forever parent.
So you make that decision, and then I guess if you're in Oakland County, Michigan, maybe you would reach out to someone like yourself at the county level, and you've got all the answers there. But do you need to have an attorney to head down this adoption process?
It's never a bad idea to have an attorney, is my answer to that. However, if both birth parents, birth mother and birth father, and when I say that, I almost always get the answer, oh, well, the birth father isn't known, or, oh, he's out of the picture. That is never true. The birth father is a big deal. You have to deal with birth father, no matter whether you know him or not. Both parental rights have to be terminated. So if both people, or if it's an unknown parent, for example, if it was a one-night stand or they have no memory of being with anyone, then they would attend a hearing. And adoptions are confidential. I'm going to say that up front. No information is ever given out to anyone other than you and your family regarding this adoption. So the birth mother would attend a hearing. She would state why she doesn't know who birth father is, and then both rights would be terminated after she signs the consent.
And then what if there is a situation where the birth mother is having severe behavioral health issues, or has a substance abuse situation going on, and is not available to come into the hearing? Can you still proceed with the adoption process?
To answer that question further, your first question on the attorney, if both parents are consenting, I would say you do not need an attorney. You absolutely can hire an attorney if it makes you feel more secure, because sometimes people say they're going to consent, and then, like you said, you can't find them. These individuals, you and I can easily attend this hearing, this situation today. We could sign documents and we could email them back and forth to each other. It's not a big deal. But for people that have an addiction or mental health issues or any number of things that prevent them from doing so, they don't have jobs, they don't have electricity, maybe even. So sending a document is not exactly as easy as one would think.
Right.
And so while Zoom is very easy to attend the hearing, you can have a phone or you can go to a friend or your parents or whatever. But submitting those documents aren't exactly easy. So because not only do they have to attend that hearing, they also have to return the consent that they sign. So if you don't know where they are or you cannot serve them, then you're going to have to, it's more than likely that you're going to have to hire an attorney, and your attorney is going to help you, as will our department. We kind of hold your hand, I guess, I want to say, and we communicate with your attorney, we communicate with you, and we get through the tough times of trying to find people.
Oh, something you said a little earlier, I think makes so much sense when you were talking about the father and the mother both participating in the process if possible. And when one party says, oh, no, the dad's not around at all, that pretty much could be fictional. And but it's, how do you feel about doing whatever you possibly can to make sure that the father is in the picture for the child? I mean, do you encourage that when you're talking to, even if there's an adoption, heading towards an adoption? Isn't it better for the child if he or she knows the father and has a relationship with them? Or in some cases, does it not make sense?
Well, in the adoption process, as far as getting to know them, we don't have anything called an open adoption in Michigan. Now, with relatives, obviously, it's not as clear cut as maybe a direct placement adoption. You are always going to know these individuals. Even if you adopt your grandchild, the hope is always, always, always going to be that your child gets on track and gets healthy and becomes in your life as well as the child's. That doesn't mean the adoption is going to stop. You'll always be that person's parent, but you're always going to want the best for your child as well. So if that happens, and we all want it to, then you are going to have that person in your life, and hopefully they know who the birth father is, and that person also is able to turn their life around. And of course, then you would want your now child to have a good relationship with both of those individuals. We have a basic, I guess, curiosity as to where we come from, what, or maybe an illness would occur and you'd want to know, what kinds of things happened in your life that maybe caused it, or let's say you don't know who they are, and the birth mother finally says, yes, I do know who they are, and your child has an illness. Then they could get in touch with that person and say, perhaps they could use a bone marrow transplant or something where medically it's important.
So it's always good if you can do it to keep both sides connected and involved.
Right. It doesn't mean, obviously you're the best decision maker when it comes to your grandchild, or at this point child. You're going to make the choice as to whether or not the person is healthy to be around that child.
Right. But in most cases, you will want both parents involved, right? You think it's better? Yes, because it's better for the child. And so how do you find a qualified adoption attorney? You don't want a personal injury attorney if you're right, or a real estate attorney if you're heading towards an adoption.
I'm not exactly sure. We cannot give out names for attorneys. Okay. We cannot make recommendations. If someone asked me on a personal level, I absolutely would tell them who I would hire. But as far as if you came into the adoption department, we don't specifically give out those names. I would hire an adoption attorney. So, Google is your friend. I'm pretty sure if you Google adoption attorneys, there's going to be some good ones that show up. So family law, I would say go to someone that's familiar with family law and ask that specific question. Do you do adoptions? Because adoptions are a little bit different as far as other types of family law.
Absolutely. And if you just tuned in, our guest today is Annette Liike. She is a youth and family caseworker at Oakland County, Michigan, Oakland County Courthouse and what have you. And she is helping us today navigate the waters of adoption. And do you have a ballpark as far as what attorney services may cost or for adoption?
I will say somewhere between $3,000 and up. It depends on what's going on. If both parents are consenting, and that's going to be pretty straightforward, and the cost is going to be low. If you can't find the parents, or the parents are fighting it, let's say they're actually going to fight you for it. They think they are perfectly healthy and able. That's going to be a little more expensive because there's actually going to be a trial, and those attorneys are going to have to prepare for the trial. Okay,
so that's a much broader process, right?
Correct.
Than just filling out the paperwork. Now, are there additional court costs or maybe additional expenses as well to this process?
Well, the costs as far as Oakland County is pretty straightforward. We charge $185 for the petition, $250 for the home study, and then you would purchase new birth certificates because you're going to be the parents listed on the birth certificate from whatever state that your child was born. So in Michigan, it's $50. Okay.
Of course, that's part of the process. You got a new birth certificate. So, how long, as a ballpark, does the adoption process take?
Well, we usually tell people 6 months so that they don't, it, it can be longer than 6 months, again, with a trial situation. Are people cooperating? Are they easy to find, hard to find? But basically, we tell people 6 months usually it does not take longer than that.
Okay, that's good to know. And so, what are the potential landmines for this process?
Well, landmines are missing parents. They are an important part of this process. So if you do not know where they are and you have hired an attorney, then it's going to be up to your attorney to locate them. Of course, your caseworker is also going to help. So to me, that's a landmine. More than one birth father named at a mother's declaration, and maybe then that person, one of those people, saying they actually want custody. Now you're going to have to go to trial again. I mean, there's a number of things that can happen that will extend the process, and maybe you weren't expecting. When a birth father shows up at a hearing and wants custody, that's usually something that's not expected.
Wow. Yeah, that would be a landmine, wouldn't it? Just so everyone's in the courtroom and this new individual comes in and says, wait a minute, I want to stake a claim and here.
We always follow the law. So we give, and the mother, I'm the mother of 3 boys. I always treat birth fathers very politely and respectfully, and parents in general, actually, birth parents in general. They're going through a hard time. It's not easy losing rights to your children.
Now, what about the judge? Does the right judge in the adoption case make a difference or not? Are there some?
Well, I love all our judges.
Great answer, by
you do not get to pick your judge. Your judge is going to be a blind draw. You'll get the judge that you have, and they're all they're excellent. They follow the law, and so no, that one is that one is out of your control. You have who you have.
But in our county, since we're both located in Oakland County, we've got some pretty good judges.
Yes, we really do. I really love our judges.
Yeah, I just in the process that we've been involved in, we had a really good experience. So it's so what has been your best case experience with an adoption? The best one, unbelievably smooth. You couldn't believe it.
I guess the best case scenario, and because adoptions are confidential, I couldn't give you something specific, but the best case scenario is that both birth parents show up to their consent hearings as they promised. Everyone provides all the legal documents that you send right away. They return them to you signed right away. And it's a clear, smooth process that goes quickly. The worst case scenario is the opposite of that. People don't return documents. The birth parents are impossible to locate. And so you have to publish it. Then it's going to take a lot longer, or the opposite also, not only that you have to publish, but that they actually attend the hearing and contest it. Then it's going to take longer. You're going to be in a trial situation in front of the judge, and it's very hard emotionally and harder financially.
Absolutely. That makes total sense. So before we leave today, and just so our audience knows, we're going to have Annette on again next week. We're going to talk about the difference between a guardianship and an adoption. I think you're going to love that. But Annette, what are the top 3 things about the adoption process that you want our audience to know?
Well, I think what I would like people to know is that we understand that it's a difficult process. What you are doing is very difficult. We are very thankful that you're doing what you're doing. You're taking care of a child. That is not an easy thing to do, to raise a child from a young age to graduation, or often longer, college, seeing them off as successful adults. Know that you're not alone. and that there are experts out there, that they're just usually a click, a phone call or away, and that can help you answer questions, guide you, so that it's making a difficult process a little bit easier.
And if someone was in Oakland County, what is the best way for them to get information on the adoption support services that you folks offer?
I would contact probably circuit court in any area to see what's to explain. Either I want to become a guardian or I want to adopt my grandchild, and what's the process. And if they can't answer you, they'll probably know which court can.
And that would work across the country, right?
I think so, yes.
And I know in Oakland County, your website is oakgov.com, right? And they could click on adoption services to get more information. They're either going to adopt a pet, you said, or they're going to adopt a child. But
if you go to oakgov.com, in the search section, type in adoption services, and then that will take you to our adoption website. And that in itself answers most questions people have. And then it also provides you with the contact information. So when you contact us, we can help you with any other questions you might have.
So if they go to the website and find the adoption services tab, for example, if they put a question in, that would get to probably just yourself or one of your colleagues, right?
Well, if you go to adoption@oakgov.com and type a question, you'll get a reply.
Okay, adoption@oakgov.com.
Correct.
Very good. Well, Annette Liike, thank you so much for being our guest today on It's a Grand Life. We talked about the adoption process. Next week, we're going to just have a discussion on adoptions versus guardianship. And I know that when you and I talked a little over a year and a half ago, it was so helpful to us, just to really gave us a lot of peace of mind as far as which process are we going to pursue at this time. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Craig. It was a pleasure.
Thank you all so much. We'll see you next time on It's a Grand Life. Thank you for joining us for another It's a Grand Life. Remember to never waste your pain. God can use your situation to bless others even halfway around the world. Be sure and subscribe to It's a Grand Life on our Facebook page, as well as YouTube and any of the various podcast channels that feature the Grand Life podcast. When it comes to raising a grand family, remember the words of the Apostle Paul, who said in 1 Corinthians 13, "Love is patient, love is kind, it always protects, always trusts, always hopes, and always perseveres. Love never fails." In leading your grand family, it's going to take faith, hope, and a whole lot of love. Please reach out to me. I can be a blessing to you and pray for you, or help you connect to free resources that can make your journey a little easier.